Okay, so it's 2 minutes after now. I think we can get started. Thank you everyone for joining us today for this kickoff webinar for the 2025 Transportation Technology Tournament. I'm going to hand it over to Sean now to start with our introductions.
Yep. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Sean Laffey, engineer with the US DOT. And yeah, as Katie said, just welcome everyone to the webinar. And thanks again for taking time to attend. Yeah, so what we'll be discussing today is really just giving an overview of the Transportation Technology Tournament that we'll be hosting this year. And honestly, if you have any questions, you can feel free to type them in the chat, but then we'll try to answer them as we go along, but we'll also have some time at the end to get to any questions that we didn't get to during the presentation. Yeah, so really to kick it off, I actually just wanted to quickly just introduce the entire team that you'll be interacting with throughout the technology tournament if you decide to join. So there are really these six main people here who you see on the screen. There's a JD Schneeberger in the top left and Adam right below him. JD uh, is actually one of the people who runs the ITS Joint Program Office, and he really is someone who pushes the tournament. And Adam works for the National Operations Center of Excellence, or NOCO, and he and JD together are really the ones who help put this all together. Then the other four people you see on this screen here, Monica, myself, Katie, and Hwami, we all work really just to do a lot of support for the tournament. And we really are the people who you're going to be interacting with throughout the entire tournament. So, yep, that's the entire team. Hwami's on line too. So thanks, Hwami, for joining us. And yep, Katie just introduced herself right before. So everyone jump to the next slide. We have a quick overview of what the ITS Joint Program Office is, as well as the National Operations Center of Excellence. And so again, so these are the two organizations within the US DOT that put on the Transportation Technology Tournament. So the Joint Program Office is the US DOT office that leads the collaboration innovation for intelligent transportation system research and development. And really their goal is just to advance the implementation of ITS to improve roadway safety and mobility for people and goods. But in addition to that safety and mobility, they're also very much concerned about the sustainability, the equity impacts, as well as the operational efficiencies of the road too. And so besides the Joint Program Office, there's the National Operations Center of Excellence, which is it's actually an organization that offers a suite of resources to serve the TISMO community. So the center offers a variety of technical services like peer exchanges, workshops, webinars, and they also have ongoing assessments of best practices in the fields and on-call assistance. So really what NOCO is an organization that really pushes TISMO solutions out into the transportation world, just trying to make sure everyone is aware of what TISMO is, and we'll cover that in this presentation a little bit, but try to make everyone aware of what TISMO is and how TISMO solutions can be used within the transportation system to accomplish the JPO's goals of improving safety, mobility, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, want to jump to the next slide, Katie? Anyway, so one of the main goals for the JPO and NOCO is to actually build ITS knowledge really from the ground up. So they try to help not only professionals in the world today, but they also try to just bring ITS and TISMO to the actual to people who are going to be coming up in the transportation field. So the point of the technology tournament, to be quite blunt, is really just to get students exposure to what ITS is. And so what we do throughout this tournament is try to put these student teams directly in touch with public agencies to solve real world transportation problems using ITS. So we'll discuss this in a little bit later within the presentation, but throughout the tournament, we offer just a whole variety of one-on-one lectures or we host lectures between us and the teams to teach you about what ITS is and to really dig into some of those more professional documents and analyses methods that are used in the actual world. And so besides the actual teaching of the tournament or teaching students about ITS for the tournament, Some of the goals really are just to expand like the teamwork and problem solving skills for all the students who actually participate. Again, we're really trying to highlight that we're gaining real world experience with ITS. So we're trying to move like beyond the classrooms and then beyond some of like the research and theoretical stages into actual like real world uses for ITS. And then in addition to this, we also really enjoy try to like pushing the networking portion of the tournament too. So we're really trying to get the student teams to interact not only with each other, but then also to be in touch with us who are at the USDOT. You try to put you in touch as well with the transportation agency, and then just other different transportation professionals, just to help the whole every student who participates try to help you like build your network, as well as just that ITS knowledge base. We're going to jump to the next slide. Um, and here we're just trying to show that we have a great diversity of schools that actually participated in the tournament last year. So we had, again, these, I think, 12 or so different schools, really from all across the country. We had, Washington's on the West Coast, Michigan in the center, um, as well as like Columbia on the East Coast, and then a whole, variety of other teams throughout the country. And it's really nice to see that we actually are having this like wide outreach to all these different schools because it shows that ITS solutions are actually are being implemented around the entire country. Anyway, so you want to jump to the next slide, Katie? Great. So here we're just trying to show who the past tournament winners have been. Um, it's always fun because you can see, in 2024, which was just last year, Michigan won. And Michigan is always one of the schools who's a perennially like within the tournament, which we greatly appreciate. But then we also have teams from Florida, UMass is there as well. Then you can also see down in 2018, we actually had a team that was made up of people who came from different universities. And we'll discuss the makeups of the teams in just a slide or two. But really, with these teams, you don't only have to come from one school. If you actually want to participate with your friends who are at other schools, or if you have people with other research with other universities as well, you can also make a team that again comes from multiple schools. So I'm going to jump to the next slide. Let's have some testimonials here. And I won't spend too much time on the slide, but really what we're trying to show is that these are quotes from students who have participated in the tournament in the past. And what's nice to see from these testimonials are that people really are using the technology tournament to learn about ITS. And then even after the tournament, they're taking the knowledge learned and actually applying it to their professions, whether they're just bringing ITS knowledge to their traffic engineering world, or if they're actually pursuing a full career in ITS. So if you want to jump to the last slide, I'll get into the team makeup here, which I was just promising a second ago. So the first part of the tournament that every student here is going to need to do is actually just create a team. So the teams can really be any makeup or composite that you really desire. Um, Generally, teams can have both undergraduate or graduate students. The teams can be interdisciplinary, which interdisciplinary is a big thing that we'll be highlighting here just because ITS is breaking away from just your traditional civil engineers and traffic engineers. We're also really coming into a world where you need to have like data analytic skills. You need to be a good planner, and then you also need to have potentially some like computer science skills too. So your team doesn't only have to be your fellow civil engineers or traffic engineers. You also can bring in students from other majors too. And I discussed you can have teams that are bringing multiple schools together. And then as well for the team sizes, we recommend that you usually have about 6 people on your team because that helps to really just share the workload for actually going through the tournament. But honestly, your team can be any size. I think Michigan last year, who ended up winning the tournament, had about 4 students. And there was another team as well that participated that had closer to 6 or 8. So there is no perfect formula for a team. It really can be whatever you desire as a what would as what you want your team to look like. Um, but yeah, we're definitely willing to have anything. Anyway, okay. That brings me to the end of my quick introduction. Sorry for stumbling through the end there. But I'll pass it off to Katie now to actually get into some of the details of the tournament.
Thanks, Sean. We did get a question in the chat, which was, can you have postdocs joining a team? I think the answer to that would be like as advisors, they definitely can be, as I'll go through a little bit later. Professors and people who work for state departments of transportation and whatnot often step in as advisors. So that could definitely apply to postdocs as well. I don't think they would necessarily be eligible for sort of the prize of getting a trip to the IT conference, but they can definitely help prepare the solutions document and provide guidance along the way.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. Completely agree.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit now about the problem statements. So these are sort of what the tournament revolves around, what you all are, you know, going to put together and then create a solution document in response to. And then I have a couple slides as well on some of the potential ITS solutions. We're kind of using today's webinar also to introduce you all about what the technology part of transportation technology is expected to be. And begin to spur ideas for some of those solutions documents as you begin to participate in the tournament. And then at the end, I'll pass it back to Sean to talk more about like what the specific requirements of this tournament are. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll have some more time at the end. So basically, problem statements are what this tournament revolves around. Problem statements present the real-world transportation challenges that the TTT strives to solve. So in the past, they've very much been unconstrained. It can be anything, any real-world problem related to safety, mobility, environment, equity. Like there's a lot of transportation problems going on. The key focus has been that there has to be the ability to use data to understand and help solve the problem. And honestly, these problem statements come with that data that can help you then come to a solution. And then another thing is that the focus of this tournament is on problem statements that can be solved using ITS, so intelligent transportation systems, and specifically transportation technology, whatever that may mean. One change we're making to the tournament this year, which may be different for those of you who have participated in the past, is that we are going to be providing all teams with the same general problem statement. We're hoping this will be sort of a welcome change to a lot of people because you can still come with your ideas, your research, your problem statement, but we're kind of having like this theme that we're hoping all the problem statements fall under to kind of help spur new ideas and also provide you with some resources that we have from other ongoing efforts, which I'll talk about on the next slide. But one last thing about problem statements is that, as I mentioned to the question about whether postdocs can join a team, teams should come with agency partners, or we can help you find an agency partner, someone who's working in the transportation industry. We found in the past this can be really helpful for teams as they're working through a problem to get that real world feedback. Agency partners, it's not like a huge level of effort for them, but they're just sort of available for question and answer sessions and to provide mentorship along the way. Hopefully, providing you all with that networking opportunity as well as some of their expertise. So as I mentioned, this year, all teams will be building off the same high-level problem statement. We want this to be flexible, so you can still apply your existing research, data, your local context to this problem statement. You can choose the location, the event, your DOT partner. We can also provide you with these things if you need them, but if you're coming with sort of a more formed idea, you're definitely welcome to use that as well. So without further ado, the problem statement for 2025 is planned special events. So this is kind of the desire to have this as sort of the overarching theme and problem statement for this year came from the fact that in a lot of the projects we've been working on in our careers today are revolving around these planned special events, given that there's a lot coming to the country in the coming like decade or so. The one that's probably been the most relevant, especially from NOCO's perspective, one of the co-sponsors of this tournament, is the 2026 FIFA World Cup, which is going to be hosted by like 48 cities across Canada, Mexico, and the United States. I guess about a year and a half from now. And there's just a lot of planning that comes in from a transportation perspective to support huge event like that. Similarly, the Olympics are coming to the United States in 2028 in Los Angeles, and then again for the Winter Olympics in 2034. That's something where it's often cities will use that as opportunity to learn from prior Olympic events and also use it as an opportunity to sort of invest in their transportation network for this special event, but also things that can last beyond. And then just beyond that, when we talk about planned special events, there's things happening everywhere. Major concerts, games, festivals, and events happen in all areas. We've listed some examples here, like the 5 major sporting leagues. There's also concerts, music festivals. I know, for example, the Taylor Swift tour is coming to a close this weekend, and that's been in major metro areas and honestly caused a lot of major transportation issues that the cities have been learning from and working to resolve. Even in smaller towns, particularly college towns, their sort of smaller events become a big deal. So you can go from like college sports events that bring in 100,000 people to maybe just even like a little festival, but it's like beyond the capacity of the transportation network on a normal day. Also, there's, Comic-Cons, conventions, conferences that happen all the time, other local festivals, fairs, parades are interesting because they often involve road closures, which can have an impact on the transportation network. And then we also listed the America 250 celebrations that'll be in 2 years as well. So just wanted to spotlight one of these. This is the one that sort of led to some of the conversations around the planned special events. So while your problem statements and your solution documents do not need to focus on the 2026 FIFA World Cup, it is a large event or really set of events that we have a lot of data on. So if you are looking for an agency partner, they may come from this peer exchange that's being formed to coordinate between cities in anticipation of this World Cup. And there's also just a lot of interesting transportation challenges that they've been discussing and creating toolkits to resolve that we think would be useful for any special event you might be working through. So the FIFA World Cup is a huge event. It's been hosted 22 times since 1930, every 4 years. It's attracts worldwide attention and also a lot of visitors. It's coming to the United States for the second time. The last time it was here was in 1994. However, since 1994, the World Cup has doubled in size. So back then it was only 24 teams. For the past, I guess, 3 decades, it's been 32 teams. And this year, for the first time, it'll be 48 teams. So just growing in terms of the number of events as well. In 1994, it was hosted at 9 venues. And then, like I said, with 24 teams, and it still holds the ticket sales record at 3.5 million, but this time it's going to be twice as big with 48 teams. And then we have this bolded statement that, comes from some of the people who are hosting this tournament, but it is just going to be a very large, big sporting event going on. The FIFA has set requirements of host cities to be able to, when they applied to host games as part of this World Cup, and some of these requirements were related to the transportation and infrastructure needs. Some of these requirements change or can still change or have changed as plans come more into fruition. But basically, host cities are responsible for the mobility of fans, workers, volunteers, some of the media, and for providing accessible transportation for those groups of people. Cities are also responsible for traffic operations and traffic management in their cities. They're responsible for wayfinding signage, so signs that can help people find event-related activities. And then for airport operations, which is going to be a major component because, the cities that these games are being hosted in are across the continent, and your team that you came to view may, end up being in a city in a different part of the continent that's not easy to drive through. So airport operations are an important component. Just as an example from the last World Cup, there were over 3,000 extra flights that arrived compared to 5 weeks prior in Qatar when they hosted in 2022. And they also had 17 million additional transit passengers. So these are like, large numbers of people, large impact on the transportation network from these major events. Okay, so some of the consideration that these cities are starting to think through. A lot of them are having a fan fest site. So in addition to the stadium where the games are occurring, there'll be like viewing points. So if a game is not in a city, or if a game is in a city but people want to watch it who weren't able to get tickets, they can go to this other site, which is also going to have is anticipated to have a lot of demand. The match schedule is not set by the cities, so it may, conflict with other things they have going on. So that's something that will need to be considered. Um, as I mentioned, the cities are responsible for transporting fans, volunteers, and workers, all of whom have different needs. So maybe you think of like fans coming right before and after an event, but workers and volunteers will maybe need to come at different hours. So there's this like large impact on the transportation network that goes beyond just um, the timing of the game or event. Um, though FIFA is responsible for teams and FIFA officials as like the very, very important people. Um, the cities are responsible for a larger number of people. Hotel locations is important thing to consider, and that's not always something that's been designed for events like this, but it's something that you're needing to accommodate as you come up with your transportation plans. Transportation and site security, coordination between venues. Um, yeah, and so there's just a lot of things that cities are needing to consider. And I guess within these, something they're needing to consider is that 60% of people viewing these games will be visitors coming from out of town, meaning that many of them are coming from out of the country. So it's also like you're going to need multilingual information. You're going to need standardized information so that if people are going from one city to another, they can become more familiar with it. Um, Mode split to venue is an interesting consideration for all sort of planned special events, because one statistic we heard for a previous event was that for every 10 people that take public transit to an event, 14 people take it away from an event. So you're having people who make multimodal decisions, and you're also having a huge impact on a transit network, particularly after an event. Um, then you have different setups that can be used to accommodate transportation demand. So park and ride is an example of allowing people to park in a different location and then sort of get in a transit vehicle together to the event. But that's something that requires a lot of upfront coordination and potentially transportation technology to help communicate it to passengers. Um, and yeah, as I mentioned before, airport operations is a big consideration for this event. It's in the past been sort of outside the scope of the transportation of the TTT, but this year it could become relevant, especially if you're thinking multimodally. That could include air travel, which may be an interesting thing to look at in some of the solutions documents. So yeah, just wanted to highlight the World Cup in particular, but wanted to reiterate the fact that you're free to assess any planned special events holistically, or even just focus on one small transportation aspect of it. So a problem statement and solution document could focus on something like high volume transit management on match days or on any days. It could focus on a specific example, such as coordinated response to a traffic incident near a stadium. So if a crash happens or something completely unrelated to a planned special event happens near a planned special event, that's something that they need to be ready to respond to. So coming up with strategies to do something like that could be really interesting. Similarly, managing an influx of fans or visitors in addition to existing transportation needs is something that a lot of cities need to consider. Um, Basically making sure that people can still get to work and still get to the hospital and things like that when there is a planned special event in the area. Another important component is pedestrians and other vulnerable road users. Basically, everyone attending a planned special event is going to be a pedestrian for that like last portion of their trip, just because even if they took transit or drove themselves, they're going to have to park or exit that vehicle somewhere. So this can lead to a lot of safety concerns, especially in sort of the crowded areas. And when you have a mixture of different vehicle types and vulnerable road users and things like that. So there's a lot of strategies that could be used to manage that from a safety perspective. Um, and then a common topic in ITS is managing traffic on arterials using traffic signals and on freeways. Okay, so that's sort of setting the stage for the planned special event use case problem statement that we're using this year for the tournament. Now I'm going to talk a little bit more about some specific ITS solutions that could be used to address this problem statement. This is sort of intended to be a little bit of an initial training exercise and also to give you guys a sense of the types of things we're looking for in solutions documents for the for the TTT. I'm just going to use the abbreviation. So yes, if you're not familiar with it, well, I'm sure many of you, given your interest in this webinar, are. ITS is an operational system of various technologies that, when combined and managed, improve the operating capabilities of the overall system. ITS is a pretty broad term that can encompass a wide variety of wireless or wireline communication-based information and electronics technologies. We talked about some of the benefits earlier, but I think this is all sort of leading toward a vision of the transportation network of the future, where you have like a more connected and integrated network. So we just kind of wanted to highlight this tournament is an opportunity for you to think boldly and to sort of look into the future. What constraints and what problems do you see with transportation as it exists today? And what technologies, maybe from other industries or other things you're learning in your classes, could be applied to sort of um, resolve those issues. I also think a benefit of the planned special event use case is that these are often an opportunity to showcase things. So maybe things that wouldn't necessarily be possible, with a big special event and all the attention and it brings, you can often showcase the technology of the future. Okay, so a couple solutions that we think are relevant for this tournament that I'll go through now. The first one is signal timing and operations. So historically, traffic signals, they're timed so that one direction is green for whatever 20 seconds, then the other direction is green for maybe 10 seconds because it has lower demand, and you switch back and forth. But with a lot of new technologies, you can create more sophisticated signal timing plans to potentially synchronize groups of traffic signals. So when you're thinking of special events, this can be used to favor traffic entering and exit a special event venue and just sort of flush out all that traffic, maybe at the expense of some side traffic for a little bit, but just getting people away from the big event and sort of clearing out an area using a signal timing plan. You can also use traffic signal timing to divert traffic around a planned or unplanned event. So kind of encourage detour routes or make them easier for people to use. And you can also support strategies like transit signal priority and emergency vehicle preemption, which allow certain high priority vehicles, in this case, transit buses or maybe emergency vehicles, to get through intersections more quickly because they're either carrying a larger number of people or needing to respond to an emergency and get through the congested area. One of the finalist solutions from last year's tournaments involved using a digital twin and sort of modeling how certain changes to the transportation network would have, what impact they would have on operations. And that's something that could definitely be applied within this ITS strategy. If you're thinking especially of like a planned special event that's never happened before, something like a digital twin could be useful to help show what that big disruption, what impact it would have on, signal timing plans and things that cities are working through. And then another aspect of this is detection methods like cameras, vehicle detection sensors, or unmanned aerial systems or drones. These can be used to monitor traffic conditions in real time so that signal timings can be modified based off actual conditions. This is something that could be really useful when you have unplanned events, but it also can be used for planned events. Okay. Another strategy we wanted to mention is transportation demand management. So transportation demand management is a pretty broad category of strategies that can be used to sort of impact traveler behavior and, encourage people to do things that are in their interest, but also help the network as a whole. So one example here is parking management, including dynamic pricing. So this can be things like allowing traffic meters, parking meters and parking lots to adjust their pricing based off demand, and then encourage people to know where they're going to park before they arrive at an area so that they're not circling for parking and just kind of getting to their parking spot, leaving their car, walking to the venue. That can be managed through different parking management strategies. Similarly, apps that incentivize transit and other modes, or incentivize people to delay their trips to a time when the traffic network won't be as congested, can be used to encourage behavior and sort of make the transportation network more dynamic. As you mentioned before, for a lot of these high profile events, multilingual apps will be important, but also multimodal apps that show people that there are different options, especially if they're unfamiliar with the city, can be really useful. Congestion pricing zones and pedestrian only zones, particularly ones that are temporary, can be used to sort of make pedestrians safer in a certain area, and also give people more information on where they should be leaving their cars and where it's going to be just so congested that they shouldn't leave their cars. And again, looking at some of the finalist solutions from last year, artificial intelligence is something that can be used in conjunction with many of these TDM strategies, basically as a tool to enhance how they've been done in the past. You know, making predictive analysis, dynamic routing, personalized guidance, making these things more effective and more efficient is something that we're looking for. It's like the type of solution we're looking for in this tournament. Okay. Our next category of ITS solutions is traveler information systems. So an example here on this slide is a dynamic message sign, but these are basically just any method of communicating out to travelers on upcoming events that may impact traffic, possible alternative transportation methods available, and other alternative routes that can be used to avoid congestion. So one thing we wanted to note here is that planned special events can have an even greater impact on the transportation network in rural areas. As students, I'm sure many of you are familiar with college towns and other areas where there can be significant traffic congestion at certain times of the year that's just beyond what the transportation network can accommodate. So you can historically, you can communicate through the radio or have these dynamic message signs and communicate information to the public. You can also do so through apps. And I'll talk a little bit later about vehicle to everything technology, which sort of builds on that to communicate directly to drivers. And then, yeah, a couple of the strategies I mentioned earlier can be combined with traveler information systems to take strategies that cities want to implement and communicate that information directly to travelers. Okay, so I think there's two more ITS solutions we wanted to go through. The first one is pedestrian safety applications. So as I mentioned before, all special event attendees in most cases are pedestrians for part of their trip, either to their car, to their pickup vehicle, to their bus, to their train, or in some cases to their final destination if they are close enough that it's somewhere they can walk to. But this can lead to many safety challenges, particularly when you get to that point where it's not everyone is walking, but some people are still walking, but there's also cars and buses and just a lot of dynamic things going on in the network, and that can definitely be a concern, particularly for pedestrians and cyclists who are the most vulnerable in that situation. So potential ITS solutions to address pedestrian safety include leading pedestrian intervals when you have the pedestrian signal turn green or white before the vehicle traffic signal does. You have pedestrian hybrid beacons and rectangular flashing beacons. These can even be used at non-intersection locations to indicate when there may be pedestrians traveling on the roadway, just giving them a higher visibility to drivers. And then other pedestrian detection and warning systems can also be useful. And one of the ones I want to talk about is actually the winner from last year's tournament. So the winner last year at the University of Michigan, we have a graphic they created on this slide. They proposed a pedestrian safety application. In their case, it was applied to a sort of reconnecting communities project where a highway is going to be changed into an arterial roadway, which does mean that there's now going to be more potential conflicts between pedestrians and vehicles. So while that wasn't a special event use case, it definitely, the technology they proposed could also be applied to special events and people, walking in an area that is not necessarily designed for pedestrians historically. So they had a pedestrian sensing and detection system that then, provided this information and was intended to reduce intersection conflicts between cars and vulnerable road users. Okay. So the last ITS solution I wanted to talk through is a bit more forward-looking. So this is vehicle to everything technology, which is the use of a variety of wireless communications technologies to enable vehicles to communicate with each other, with other road users such as pedestrians and bicyclists, and with infrastructure. So this kind of technology could save lives and enhance mobility by enabling transportation system users to communicate with each other and to also communicate directly with roadside infrastructure. Um, there's a variety of like safety benefits of V2X, mobility benefits, and also environmental benefits. Some relevant use cases for a planned special event include single priority and preemption. So this is sort of that transit signal priority, emergency vehicle preemption that I talked about earlier. However, with V2X technology, rather than needing buses to be like equipped with some like company's device that allows it to communicate with the traffic signal, you can instead have all vehicles be able to communicate with the traffic signal with a device, but a device that may have been installed when their vehicle was purchased or that has a variety of uses, which could be useful in a planned special event situation because then you might need signal priority for all vehicles and not just buses, and they wouldn't be, getting a device specific for that purpose, but their connected V2X equipped vehicle would be able to communicate. Another is pedestrian and cyclist warnings. So this is when alerts about potential conflicts with bicyclists, pedestrians, and all vulnerable users are provided primarily to drivers from pedestrians using infrastructure-based detection or personal devices that indicate they're at a potential conflict point. So like one example here that we've seen in the past is equipping shared use vehicles and like the shared use scooters and bicycles in a transportation network with V2X technology so that it can communicate directly with vehicles to indicate when they might be at a point where it can be unsafe. And then lastly, we have advisories and alert. So this is presenting traffic advisories to travelers of events, road closures, things like that. Basically communicating this not to just to those dynamic message signs that I showed earlier, but also directly in vehicles on their little vehicle screen so that people can make detour decisions or delay their travel, things like that. So as part of the Transportation Technology Tournament, we'll be providing more trainings and resources, like sort of what I just went over. At the beginning of the tournament, teams will receive a package of trainings and resources to enhance their ITS knowledge. These trainings should only take a few hours. And they're not mandatory, but we think they'll be helpful, especially depending on what level of knowledge you're coming into this tournament with. We know some people have learned a lot of this already in their classes, but some might be newer to the ITS space, so that's what these trainings are intended to help with. And additional resources can also be provided if you want to learn more. A lot of these trainings and resources reference existing federal initiatives that Sean and I and others on our team have been involved in. So one is the Smart Community Resource Center, which is like a website with a lot of resources. Then you also have the architecture reference for cooperative intelligent transportation, which will help you develop your ITS architecture, which is an important part of your solutions document. You have the ITS deployment evaluation database, which is a really helpful database that provides a lot of information on deployments of ITS solutions throughout the country and throughout the world. And then you have the National Road Safety Strategy and other safety programs. In addition, USDOT staff and the entirety of our team will be available throughout the competition via virtual sessions to deliver trainings and outside of those to answer any questions you may have. And then a couple last resources I wanted to highlight. um, related to special events include um, the there's a series of planned special event webinars that are happening. Um, One happened earlier today, so if you missed it, a recording will be available, and that one was about the Dallas World Cup planning and also the Taylor Swift concert after actions, sort of using prior special events to help them plan for future special events. The next one in that series will be in March, which will be during the time of this tournament, and that will be related to New Jersey World Cup planning and election day or inauguration day after action. Um, the NOCO World Cup Toolkit is also currently under development, and it will be provided as a resource. This is something where the learnings from a lot of the different cities that are involved in the tournament will be aggregated together, and I think it'll be a helpful resource for you all as students. And then you'll also be welcome as part of this tournament to listen in on NOCO World Cup Resource Committee meetings. These are monthly meetings, and it would be a good opportunity to sort of see these conversations firsthand and also potentially learn things that could be useful for your solutions document. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Sean, but I guess we can pause for a second. I see there's some stuff going on in the chat. So maybe if there's any questions we want to answer.
Yeah, thanks. There's been two questions, Katie. The first one was if this presentation recording or summary documents would be shared. So yeah, we can definitely share the presentation and yeah, or just ask if everyone on the call can actually just type in actually just which school you're with as well as your email. Then we'll be able to share their presentation with everyone here. And then the second question that came in was asking if the partner organization has to be a DOT or if it can also be a private organization. Do you want to take that one, Katie?
Yeah, I think they could be a private organization. We had some last year where
Yep.
it was transportation professionals who worked for a private organization, and that's fine. They often do a lot of the technical work and can be good resources.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Really the goal of the partner, we call it an agency, but it's really just making sure you have a professional on your side who can help answer any like transportation related questions that you have. We'll always be available, but sometimes it's always better just to have that more personal connection. Great. Okay. Yeah, I'll spend the last few minutes honestly just jumping back into some more specifics about the tournament. And I always actually really like to start pretty much at the end of the tournament. So that way I can show like, what the whole tournament is working towards. So within the ITS world, a document that is always submitted pretty early in the transportation or in the stages of actually coming up with an ITS solution is called a concept of operations. And that's actually what we're looking for this tournament. And so a concept of operations really is a document that just describes your problem and then describes your solution. And it gives a whole bunch of other details, about like who stakeholders are and like what the cost is. But we'll learn all of that throughout the tournament, but really it's the concept of operations that we actually end up judging at the end of the tournament just to determine who the finalists are. And so so after the solution documents are submitted, we'll select three finalists, and then three finalists are actually invited to the ITE annual meeting. And so at the ITE annual meeting, we actually have all the finalists present their present their concept of operations to a panel of judges, and then the judges are the ones who actually select the winner. So we actually really love about this tournament is that so your trip to ITE is fully paid for, and that includes flights, hotels, and then like any expenses like meals or whatever that you incur too. So it's a really great way for like many students to actually come to ITE and to continue to grow their network, as well as actually just learn those presentation skills too. So if you jump to the next slide, Katie. Thank you. And so, in addition, again, you're presenting, but then what also happens for all the student teams is that the National Operations Center of Excellence actually post your resumes online, and then throughout the IT annual event, like we the USDOT, we actually promote your resumes online, and we just say anyone who's looking for ITS professionals, you have a whole slew of all these new students who participate in this tournament, we will always vouch for your knowledge because you were able to participate. And so then that way, anyone who's looking to hire does have a place where they can go and find your resume. In addition to that, we also post your concept of operations, and then any students who actually make and throughout the tournament, we actually promote all the student teams on social media. One of the things that we ask for the teams is like, a quick video just to introduce yourselves. And we like to post that. So just the ITS world begins to learn who all the students are who are participating, and kind of you just get an introduction to the next generation of ITS professionals. Um, yeah, and then in addition to that, it's kind of this last bullet here that Katie was talking about before is that we really also we also help you identify opportunities, in national forums. So sometimes students will ask you to come onto a webinar, just to help talk about what the technology tournament is, or like how you as students, are getting involved in ITS. And then we also, again, just provide those resources for the trainings. Okay. Um, I promise we only have just 2 or 3 more slides. So, actually, okay, you can just skip right to the next slide. Throughout the tournament, we offer trainings. And so here we'll just quickly talk about the schedule. So you can see we held a tournament kickoff, in January. And so that way the tournament's actually starting at the beginning of the spring semester for everyone. And so then throughout the entire semester, we'll have teams sign up. And then if you look at that third line there, we actually deliver pretty much bi-weekly to monthly trainings that all the teams are able to participate in. And this is a way for the students to actually come talk to us, ask us ITS questions, then also just learn from us about what ITS is. We never make any of these trainings or office hours or whatever you want to call them. Nothing here is mandatory. We're just really trying to provide you with all the tools you need to be successful within the tournament. Um, anyway, so we had those trainings and office hours throughout the entire semester, but we actually have the solutions document due, what we hope is after everyone's finals, so pretty much the end of May. And so then once you submit your solutions documents, we review them on our side. We select the 3 finalists, and the 3 finalists present at ITE. And so that's, yeah, pretty much the end of the schedule. So if you want to learn more about the tournament, or if you just have any questions or want to sign up, or we'd have like a express interest form that you can fill out, you can go to the National Operations Center of Excellence website for the Transportation Technology Tournament, or if you just Google NOCOE TTT or NOCOE Technology Tournament, the first link will take you there as well. Great. Okay, and with that, we finally made it to our last slide, and now we can open it up to any questions. So, yeah, if anyone wants to either raise their hand just to let us know that you're thinking of typing in a question, you can type in a question, or however we want to do this. I'll be on, yeah, for the next 10, 15, 20 minutes, however long we want. So thank you for joining. Um, Yeah, Katie, is there any other final thoughts that you had, or final things that you wanted to say to everyone?
I think you mentioned that the sign up deadline is not until mid-February. So we are going to be hosting another introduction webinar like the one today in the end of January. So if you have any friends or anyone who wasn't able to make it today, you can share the recording, but we can also attend that one in January. You'll get more information from NOCO on that. Yeah, and then just put together a team and sign up by mid-February, and then the tournament will really get started at that point. Feel free to start, early, especially if it works well for you over winter break and whatnot. But that's kind of what we're seeing as the official schedule. And then we have a question: can we be partnered with more than one organization, like one private and one public organization?
Mhm.
I think the answer is that yes, right?
Yes. Yep, I would say so.
Yeah, especially, I mean, they're probably working together on projects and whatnot. So I feel like that's been common in the past, where maybe it's been in the past like your university and a DOT, but I don't see why it couldn't be a DOT and a consultant they work with or something like that.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Again, really, we're trying to be as flexible and non-restrictive as possible for everyone. And so, however you would like for your own team to look, as well as who your advisors are, we're very amenable, very flexible. We're not going to, be restrictive in any way about that. Thanks. Then, then I see you have your hand raised. If you can just type your question in the chat, if you don't mind. Um, let's see. Yeah, and sort of my final thoughts too, as well, as we're again the questions coming in. Yeah, I just wanted to really reiterate that what Katie and I presented today, what we're really just trying to show is that throughout this tournament, you have the problem statements, but we're also really just want to make sure that every student who's participating really gains a good foundational knowledge like in the ITS field. So trying to make sure you'll come away knowing, what are the technologies? What can we even do with some of these technologies? As well as like how can you begin to like put different technologies together in order to implement some of these different strategies. And we really feel that having this special event focus will really help to set every team up for the real world, especially with just Katie presented over the next 5 years here in the US. We have so many special events. Like this will be a great skill that you'll be able to put in your resume to actually build your, just to start to build your, to build your resume.
Agreed.
Mm.
So I've let participants talk. So Nana, if you'd like to say your question verbally, you can do that now too. I think you have to take yourself off mute though. Okay, but if not, if there's no other questions too, we'll still be on for a couple more minutes. If anyone wants to stick on and ask more questions, feel free to do so. If not, carry on with your days. But thank you all for joining us today. Appreciate your interest in the tournament. And yeah, hope to see you again in January, February timeframe.
Yes, thanks everyone. Appreciate it.